Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to hop on to our webinar today to learn about this latest release that we've pushed out there. If you've got the right installed version, you should have something like 4.14.5.3680. That's currently the latest and greatest that's out there. And so, yeah, lots of different areas where we made some small tweaks, some updates, some improvements, some feature expansions and things. So yeah, gonna kind of be in and around a lot of different places today. So we'll kind of run through those different areas. Just quick reminder as we get started in your webinar controls, you have that Q&A section. Feel free to pull that open off to the side if you like. I'll try to keep an eye on that as we kind of work through this today. And if you have some questions that relate to everybody, I try to answer those live as we're working through things, or if there's maybe some things that we can just follow up afterward too, if we don't have time to get to them all. So again, feel free to find that in your webinar controls and take advantage of that section to post some questions and things as we go through. So with that said, going to start today just jumping over into the profile section first with a few items in various different places there. One of those things relates to presets. I'm going to come over to the presets tab, and we have the ability to come in here to this like segment tool now. You now have the ability to rename a preset. So if you had, maybe you're not happy with how you had named a particular preset. I mean, the preset itself was fine, but you just wanted to be able to categorize it different or organize it or type, give it a different name. You can now come to the presets tab, find that specific preset, and use the rename button here and give it a new title, whatever that happens to be. Reminder again that if you don't like the way that your presets are ordered, you can also drag and drop them into any order that you like. And so whatever order that you place them here in this list will reflect how they are displayed in that drop-down list over there in the digitizer. And if you're not familiar with presets, we're not going to take the time to jump in that today, but really useful tool. So if you haven't leveraged those yet, I encourage you to either chat in with us at the support site, or you find more information if you go to help and online learning center, search about presets. Lots of good opportunities there. On the custom product tab over here, so this is some functionality that was actually available over in the digitizer area, or sorry, in the materialist area, but wasn't necessarily back here in the profile when it comes to creating custom products. And specifically what that would be is if I come in here to this custom product that I've created and I click on the edit button, and let's say that I wanted my 2-inch by 10-foot blackened aluminum trim, but maybe I also had a white version of this. And so I come in here and I change this to white. Previously, you would have only been able to basically just save that change. You wouldn't have been able to duplicate that product. But now, similar to capabilities that were over in the material list, we've put that back here in the profile as well, where you can now, by making an adjustment and change here, instead of just saving this as this particular item, you can instead choose to create a new custom product. So I'll choose that here in this case, and now you can see I've ended up with my blackened aluminum trim is still here, and then I have a whole separate product here created for the white aluminum trim. So if you're working on adding maybe a collection of database custom items into your database, that new functionality may prove useful to you in just kind of working through that list more quickly. Over on the stocking links tab, down here in the additional pre-cut stud lengths section, we've, in addition to the checkboxes, you've always had the ability to enter different lengths that you might want for your pre-cuts that might show up on the job. And this might be even especially more useful in commercial type settings where the architect has multiple different floors with different specific stud heights. So if you wanted to enter different levels now, so I could enter 99 inches and 96, or well, that's not very interesting, 94 inches. But here's where the change is at. Previously, we only had 3 fields that were available, but now as you enter and fill out those 3 fields and you need another space, you can actually do that now. You can have multiples up to even 20 of these different options. So just giving you more control over how your wall assembly stud heights, or not heights are calculated, but which specific stocking length materials might be used to ship out onto your actual material list. Over in the kit components area, just to help make things a little bit more clear, when you're working on your kit components themselves, I'm going to come here to say my miscellaneous connector. And if I wanted to set one of these, like my PSCL is my initial product family. So you can see right now I don't have an initial product family. If I select it, previously you would just right click and you choose set initial product family, but sometimes that wasn't always as clear. So now we've added this button down here to just make that a little bit more out in front of people, where you can select it, click the set initial product family, and have that as your new setting there. So that can just make your kit building a little bit more straightforward, a little more obvious as you work on things. Over in the framing layouts section, or for framing layouts, and this one really relates to file size that your project file size. One of the things that impacts how large your file can become as you work on your job can be, if you're using framing layouts, having multiple framing layouts, like, even 4, 5, 6, maybe I know some people have 10, 11, 12, 30 of them, depending on the type of work that you're doing. So those can really swell the size of your PEDB file. If that's something that's concerning to you, there is a trade-off that we've introduced for some requests for some users. So if you come down to the General tab here, you have a new setting here in the Layouts section. So this is the Framing Layout section of the General Profile tab. And this new setting, the default is essentially the behavior that it's always been, which is that you're going to save framing layout images with your job file. But you do have the option now to uncheck that box to where the framing layout images won't be saved. And so let's take a kind of a look here of what that means. So here in this job, I can see I have some framing layouts that I've already created. And if I was to view them all, here, I'm going to continue with theirs. Okay, so here are some of the different ones that I've created. But now if I say, hey, what's more important to me is not so much, saving those images, but it's more just, I want to shrink my file size, especially if, I'm talking about, 50 and 60 megabyte size files. So by unchecking that box, I'm going to do a file save as here so I don't write over my existing file. But I'm going to say, hey, this is my my smaller size job, and I'll click save. Okay, so now we've saved that project, and now on close of this project, what's going to happen, I'm going to go ahead and let's see here, just minimize this for the moment. So what's going to happen here, I'm going to close this. And what you're going to see here is that now I've got this small size job that's here. And what we should be able to see here is, because I expand this a little bit further. So here is our original size right here. So we have, a little over 8 megabytes. And now when I've saved out that job, now I've dropped that down to 6. So not as drastic of a difference as some of your cases may be. But just to show you then what that happens, I'm going to go here and I'm going to open up that small size job. And while that's opening up, I'm just going to open up this other one as well. Let's take a look here at this small size job. So I've saved it, I've closed it, I've reopened it, I've gone through that cycle, and so now I'm going to come to the framing layouts. Notice that my framing layouts are actually still here, meaning the shells of them. I can't choose to view them right now because those framing layout images aren't available. But what it has remembered is where those locations are at. So I could still use that viewport recapture tool that's available. So I could say, hey, I want to viewport recapture all of these. click continue with theirs in this case, and it's going to ask me if I for sure want to do that, and it's going to say yes. And so now it's going to go back to all those viewport locations, and it's going to just recapture all those again based on what I've currently at. So I could come back to a job and I could make changes and revisions, and then even though I don't have the original framing layouts anymore, I can still pretty easily get back to them. So again, it really kind of boils down to the idea of file size is really the goal of that. So if file size is something that's important to you for your long-term storage, especially, that would be a way that you could make some significant changes and updates there. So that's, again, you find that over, as far as that change or that ability, you're going to find that over in the plan tab or in the profile tab under general framing layout section. Moving along to formulas, and this is going to show up a couple different places. One of the changes we made relates to the on-center spacing for area on-center spacing, which really the primary function for this is the batten siding application. You can now apply lengths. So you could do this in the profile section, but also if we bounce over here to the material list where you actually might use this, say, in a project, I'm going to come here to my exterior trim. Here's my batten siding right here. So if I'm using things like 1x2s instead of a fixed length product, and I'm actually depending on stocking lengths, before, I could enter in the, the square footage, 400 square feet, and I've got 346, random lengths of material that I need to cover that area. But what I can do now, either by making settings in the profile or making settings, or just right here in the list, I can change this to, say, ML16, where I want this to actually roll out into 16 footers. And so now you can use that in the batten siding application. So that was a small change and update. Jumping over to reports area, a couple changes here. One, if you're using add and subtract lists, so I've got an add and subtract list that I've created right here, a report. I'm going to click view. And if you're not familiar with that, again, there's lots of pretty cool features there you can look into. But in this case, I'm comparing multiple different lists. And then when I'm trying to find, okay, what's changed about different lists, what I need to add, what I need to remove in order to get to maybe a different option type, we've added in these plus and minus buttons here just to make it a little bit more clear of what specifically is going on for a specific pack. So that's a small change that we've made there. Then in the area of report multipliers, so if you're using over here in the reports tab and you're, let's say I'm going to create a new combined building report. And so I'm going to go to my condensed, and then I'm going to use customize list settings here. So in this case, I'm going to combine multiple different lists here. And let's say that I wanted, 2 of this building and, 5 of this building and 9 of this building. And I want to combine all this together on one report. So I'm going to click OK, and now I've got my new report. You can see here that we've added these notations here. That may have already existed before, but what's new is we're going to click on View, pull this up, and those notations also are now showing up here. So if you've multiplied, if you're using the reports multipliers here in the Reports tab, and you run a combined report, now you're going to have that indicator up here in your list area of the houses ×2, the alternate buildings ×5, and alternate building option is ×9. So we've added those notations in there if that's helpful for some of you in that arena. Jumping over to the digitizer area, a couple changes here. One, it relates to the linear tool here and the ability that you have to, of course, come here and add in a count spacing. Previously, this was capped out at, I think it might have been 8 feet or something, but based on some user feedback that they just needed some more flexibility, you actually now have the capability of coming all the way up to 25 feet now. So you could actually have a pretty long on-center spacing. So if you have, and that's actually a substantial jump. So if you found that you were ever capped out or limited on, how far apart you can make those on-center spacings for certain things that you maybe don't want to be doing, that's been significantly expanded. So you can take advantage of that. Another item in the digitizer area relates to page visibility. So this control down here, And there is some requests of that where maybe a blueprint comes in that is just exceptionally dark, and it really doesn't matter what page you go to, it's just too dark. And so really what you'd like to be able to do is just kind of dim down all of the pages on the plan, at least to a certain extent, and not have to come to every single page and make it lighter or darker. So to help with that, you can see down here in our little toolbar area, the way things tend to work. If I come down here, like to my crosshair auto or on or off, you can toggle these by clicking them on and off. And if you didn't know about this, these aren't new features over here. This is just the same as it always has been, but you might find some of these useful. You can toggle through. So you toggle the words to get different behavior, ortho on, ortho off, and so on. In a similar fashion, we've applied that same thing here to the current page visibility. If you click on the words, now it changes from current pages visibility to all page visibility. So while you're in this mode, if you were to grab the slider bar here, and I slide it all the way down to say to even almost nothing, that is actually going to affect every single page in my pages list. So that yeah, if you have a plan that is like I described before, you just really want to dim the pages a little bit across the whole board. Maybe it's not that light, maybe it's more like 50 or 60%. You can affect all the pages. If you toggle this back now to current page visibility, now when you go to move the slider, it's only going to affect just that one page that you're working on. But keep in mind, if you've done custom ones, like individual, like on a current page here and a current page here, you've made changes. If you do toggle back to the all pages, then if you go and slide that bar, you are saying that you want to apply that across all the different pages across the whole the whole pages list. So just keep that in mind of order of operations of how you might use that. So again, toggle that down here in the toolbar. Overlay. So then shifting into a set of features, and you may have seen this referenced in the release email about how to handle jobs where you have a bunch of revision sets that come in. So maybe you're working on the set of plans originally, and then you do the job, you quote it out, and you send it out the door, and then they say, okay, yes, that looks good. We want your business, or yeah, we're going to give you our business or whatever. But now there's another revision. So can you go through and make changes and update your material list accordingly? And maybe that happens if this is even like a commercial project, maybe that happens 3 or 4 times. Here's an example of a job that actually we were working on our own team. But an example of one that actually went through multiple revisions. So you can see down here that the way that we have tended to handle this in the past, because it seems to work out the best, and you may have different methods that you've come up with on your own, but this is something that we've found to work a fairly good system. And that is we tend to take the new revision pages. So you can see up here, we added in, the new revision pages come in. So we pull in the new PDFs with all the revision types. And, if we scroll down further, we might be, revision B, revision C, and so on. So lots of revisions. Rather than trying to copy and paste all the material around from one page to the next page and then try to, get it all aligned and everything, what we tend to do is actually apply that new revision page as an overlay to the current page. And you can see in this job, this is actually how we would have done it previously, is we'll take this overlay. So you can see right here, we have an overlay B has been applied to this project now. And it has the light bulb turned on, but it also has the color been set to kind of a light gray. So what you're actually looking at here is a light gray. This is the overlay. It's the revision set that we have placed over top of our original page, and are kind of using it as our background image, really. So we can use framing layouts with this again and get it all with the current pages and so on and so forth. So it was kind of like, we were using overlays to sort of be the background image, even though they really weren't the background image, and that led to some other issues. So what we've done now is we've given you the ability to make, and you may find, actually, I'll interrupt myself here, you may find other uses for this feature besides just revisions. You may have other causes or reasons to actually make use of this. But what we've done, more so for the revision purpose, is we've made a few different changes. One is that we've sorted all the overlays now to the top of the markup items list, so that just they're easier to find. Before they were a little bit buried further down. So we made that one change, a small minor change. But then we've given you the opportunity to take a specific overlay. So like here we have overlay B. This is like, the B revision of this project. And right now it's just turned on as an overlay. But instead, what we can do is we can right click on this item, and you have the ability to set this overlay as the background image for this page. So I'm going to do that here. And so you're going to see what happens is now this, I lose the light bulb control for this overlay, because now it's just full on is the background image for this page. We've essentially replaced the background image that we were using, and now we're just using whatever this overlay is. Now, and to make this a little bit more clear in your pages list, you can see here's the page that we're on. We've also inserted this icon here with this overlay, indicating that, okay, yes, you're on the same page that originally was this S2.4, and if we were to do the, up here and look at file locations and everything, it's that original image. But we're now actually showing you with this overlay that this is no longer the original background image, it's this overlay that's now being the background image for this page. Which also means that this overlay here, this image that's been set here, is now going to be responsive to the slider bar here. So I slide that in and out. And so that's going to be what is showing on the plan. In addition to that, when you were to do like a framing layout capture, if you're using this functionality here where the page visibility override, that overlay will also be responsive to that as well. And then also, if you were to do any additional compare overlays, so if you had like a different overlay sheet that was on this page and you wanted to do a compare overlay, that was always targeting the underlying page image. And so since you have essentially made this overlay to now be the underlying target page image, that's now will be the target for all of these, any compare overlays that you do. So this really is a means or a method to be able to take an alternate image, an alternate page, and put it as, basically replace the underlying page image with something else than what originally you had drawn over the top of. So hopefully that makes sense, what the capabilities are there. Again, you may have different functionalities or reasons why you may want to take advantage of that or use that feature. We really built it with the idea of revision sets is where we were coming from, but just be aware of that. If you ever want to, and so a couple final comments on that to be aware of. So you are not able to align an overlay or move an overlay once you're into that mode, nor are you able to compare overlays. So if you want to do any of those things, you would actually need to take yourself back out of that mode and no longer make it that. And instead, you could, at that point, you could align the overlay since it's just sort of a regular overlay at that point. But once you set it in as the background image, it kind of locks it in place until you pull it back out of that mode again. Jumping over from there, so that's kind of the areas in the digitizer. Then also in Hub, so we've also made quite several other improvements there. One relates to the ability to come over here to the account screen just for a moment, to a team setting, or actually, yeah, let's come to the team setting. Give it just a second here to catch up. Okay, and so then one of the options that you have is to include output file access links in the project status change emails. What this is if you are sending out emails to those who are like your salespeople or people you're doing the work for, and you want them to be able to have access to those files without having to go back and get those again, without having to necessarily use the hub feature, then what you'd be able to do is come now here to your files, and I'm going to have to come to a job that we've actually completed. So come down here, So if you're those you can send those links out in the emails and they'll automatically be included. I'm going to come down here to it. Let's see a job here. So now, but now what you have, if you ever have a salesperson or somebody call back and they say, well, I'd like to be able to get at those jobs again, I don't have the link anymore, or you just want to pass the link to somebody else who wants to be able to get to those output files that you've posted, then you have the ability to actually just get that link now right from here. So you can go to the project access link and it's going to fetch that information and generate that project access link. You can choose that button right there, and then there's that access link that you can choose to give to people. And you can post that and paste it into anything. And eventually that just for security reasons, that link will eventually expire, but it'll be available for a period of time. And then you could always choose to generate another one if you needed to. We've also provided a means for you to group your projects. So if you come here and you have now the option to group things like by estimator or by salesperson or so on. So I'm going to make that change here, and you could see, you know, I'm grouping my project here by just by, I only have one estimator at the moment. But if I was to change this to say like by salesperson instead, which might be more interesting, then you can see it's grouped according to things. So I can look through that list and organize projects by salesperson. So the whole group by, that's a new feature there to be able to sort your list. For filtering, another option, we've added a few more options since then, and down here in the on hold projects, which I'll talk about on hold in just a moment. But you can sort things by filter by things on hold, by sales status of whether or not somebody was pending or sold or lost, project types. So lots of different ways that you can filter your projects now as well. Going back over here to your general projects information, you can see here that we've added in down below an option for you to be able to mark a job for being on hold. So I'm going to check the box there or uncheck the box. I'm going to see here. Let's come over here to who's the salesperson on this one. When I set that project to be on hold, it's also going to add text out here to the left of the name. That way it's more clear of which projects may or may not be on hold. So if for whatever reason you need to kind of put something into that state, you now have a way to toggle that in and out of that. We've also made some changes related to, I think I'm going to change this back to none. And I'm going to scroll down here, just completed and find. So this project, we've made changes related to when's like these request revision buttons show up and who has access to those. Previously, you kind of had to have the job assigned to you as the estimator if you're going to be able to click on the request revisions button. But we're also seeing that there were other cases where you might have needed to have control over that otherwise. So like right now, I'm going to set the let's see here, the estimator to, so I'm filtering my projects. I'm going to say all projects. There we go. So let's come down here to my completed jobs here. Pick one of these, and I'm going to set this to be Greg, the estimator. So now I'm looking here at the estimator job. But even though Greg's the estimator, since I am also an estimator in this, I have the option to choose to force this back into revisions. So if I'm more just trying to manage something and managing a team of people who are working on stuff, even though it's assigned to Greg, I can come in here and say, hey, I want to, set this. This is being set back to revisions. I heard from the guy today. He contacted me as, being the lead estimator here. So I set it back into revisions, and then that would be back onto Greg's plate with whatever notes that were set through it. So just gave some more flexibility of how you can push those things through. When it comes to creating a project, again, based on some user feedback, the sales dropdown, and this may affect other dropdowns as well, but if you're trying to find a specific person, you can actually now should be able to click into here and hit and type a name. So like, or type the first few letters of a name. So like if I type Adam, you can see that it comes to that focus, or if I type a G, I go to the Greg focus and I can pick that. So if you have a long list of salespeople, being able to type kind of the first few letters of their name to be able to have it pick that item that's been added in as functionality now. And then let's see, is there any other ones that I wanted to touch on here? I think the other thing would just, that would be a team setting that we've made related to the ability for due dates. Some teams were noting that while it's nice for them to be able to have a due date and they want salespeople to be able to see a due date, they don't necessarily want the salespeople to just be able to, all of a sudden just change that due date on them from like from a different screen or whatever. So over here in the account area, if you come to the team settings, an option that you have here is allow salesperson to edit a project's due date. So by default, that's turned on, but if you would prefer to just more control that, if you're like the estimator and you don't necessarily want salespeople just always changing the due date on you, you want them to just sort of reach out to you and find it out if that's possible. Then you could uncheck that box. And so salespeople would be able to view the due date and see, how their projects are being prioritized and so on. But they would have to, get with you directly in order to actually make that change in the list. So that covers, I think, most of the changes and updates that were in this latest release. Thanks again for taking the time to hop on. We are recording this session, so if there is someone that you wanted to pass that on to, feel free to reach out to us and we can get you that link. And of course, then the other place that you can always find webinars and things when we've either done in the past, but I'll just point this out to you here in the Online Learning Center. What you can do is if you come down here to training videos and you come down here to webinar training and training on demand, here is where our kind of playlist is of webinars that are available. You can always see the longer list, but the most current ones are on top. And you can see here, actually, this one is the latest webinar that we had, and we're having another one later this week. I encourage you all to be a part of, just a short 15-ish minutes or so webinar that you can join in, just some tips and tricks. Last week's was about hotkeys and presets, totally different topic this week. So encourage you to be involved with those. You can look for an email that'll probably be in your inbox later this week with more reminders of signing up for those. So again, thanks for taking the time to hop on today, and we will touch base with you more, and also feel free to reach out to us with any questions you have, and we'll talk to you more later. Thanks.